Imagine being told you have 14 days to get rid of your family pets or face a soul-crushing $200 every single day fine. That's exactly what an ignorant HOA board tried to do to one homeowner who just wanted to raise his backyard chickens. But instead of backing down, he took them to court, won a massive county grant, and completely embarrassed the board. But the best part, 1 month later, the HOA suffered a massive crisis and had to beg him to save them. Here is how it happened. They came for my chickens on a Wednesday afternoon, 3 members of the HOA board standing at my property line with a printed notice, a camera, and the kind of self-righteous certainty that makes reasonable people do unreasonable things. The woman in front, Margaret Lindholm, held the paper like it was a court summons, and in her mind it probably was. If you've ever been told that your harmless hobby violates some obscure rule written by people who have never set foot on your property, you're going to want to stay for this one. Hit subscribe on Juicy Revenge Club right now, because we cover every story where the rulebook gets weaponized and the people who wrote it end up eating their words. My name is Tom Castellano, and I've lived at 428 Briar Glen Court for 9 years. I moved here because the lot was 1/3 of an acre, the backyard had mature oak trees, and the soil was dark, rich, and perfect for the garden I'd been planning since my 20s. In year 3, I built 4 raised beds and a small chicken coop in the back corner of my property, 40 feet from the nearest property line, completely screened by a 6-foot cedar fence I'd installed myself. I kept 6 hens. No roosters, quiet birds, clean birds. They gave me eggs, they ate my kitchen scraps, and they fertilized my garden soil better than anything I could buy at a store. I pulled the permits. I checked county ordinances. Residential chickens were allowed in our zone as long as the coop was a minimum of 25 feet from neighboring structures and you kept fewer than 10 birds. I was at 40 feet. I had 6. I filed the paperwork with the County Agriculture Extension Office. I even had my coop inspected by a county health officer named Martin Ruiz, who signed off on ventilation, cleanliness, and predator-proofing. Then Margaret Lindholm was elected HOA president. She ran on a platform of preserving property values and maintaining community standards, which in practice meant she spent her first 4 months generating violation notices for things like unmatched mailbox paint and hedges that grew 2 inches over the approved height. I got my first notice 11 months into her term. It was delivered by certified mail, which should have been my first clue she was serious. The letter read, "Your operation of livestock on residential property at 428 Briar Glen Court is in direct violation of HOA Covenant Section 9.3a, Prohibited Uses of Residential Property. You have 14 days to remove all animals and related structures or face fines of $200 per day and potential legal action." I read it 3 times. Livestock. I had 6 chickens in a coop smaller than most garden sheds. I scanned the letter, pulled up the HOA covenants on my laptop, and read Section 9.3a in full. It prohibited the operation of commercial farming, kennels, and breeding operations on residential lots. There was no mention of backyard chickens. I emailed Margaret directly with a polite, carefully worded response. I explained that my chickens were personal pets, not a commercial operation, that I had county approval, and that Section 9.3a as written did not appear to prohibit small-scale personal animal husbandry. Her response came 16 hours later. The board interprets Section 9.3a to include all livestock and farm animals regardless of quantity or purpose. Your chickens constitute a violation. The 14-day notice stands. I printed the email, I printed the covenant, I highlighted the word interprets, then I called my friend Jasmine Okafer, who worked as a paralegal for a civil litigation firm downtown. She'd helped me with my property survey when I bought the house. She read the email twice. She can't just reinterpret a covenant to mean something it doesn't say, Tom. That's not how contracts work. So what do? You get an attorney, a real one. Someone who does property law and HOA cases, because if she's willing to twist the language this badly over chickens, she's going to twist it over everything else too. Her name was Leona Voss, and she worked out of a narrow office on the 3rd floor of a restored brick building near the courthouse. She had sharp eyes, graying hair pulled into a bun, and a reputation for making HOA boards regret overreach. I brought her everything. The original covenant document, the email chain, the county permits, Martin Ruiz's inspection report, and photographs of my coop, my yard, and the distance measurements from my property line. She read through it all without speaking, making notes on a yellow legal pad. When she finished, she looked up. "This is textbook overreach," she said. "The covenant language is clear. It prohibits commercial operations. You're not running a business. You have pets that happen to produce eggs for personal use. There's no reasonable interpretation of 9.3a that includes what you're doing. So they can't fine me. They can try, but if they do, we'll bury them in paperwork. More importantly, we're going to send them a letter right now making it very clear that any fines, any enforcement actions, or any attempt to remove your property will result in legal action for breach of covenant, harassment, and abuse of authority." The letter went out the next day. It was 3 pages long, cited 4 separate case precedents, and concluded with a paragraph that essentially said if the board wanted to test this in court, Leona would be happy to oblige and pursue damages. Margaret's response came 72 hours later, not by email but by certified letter again. The board maintains its position. Fines will begin accruing as of the original notice deadline. Your attorney's interpretation is noted but not accepted. The fines started showing up on my HOA account portal that Friday, $200 per day backdated to the original 14-day deadline. By the time I logged in, the total was $1,800. I forwarded the screenshot to Leona. Her response was immediate. Do not pay a single cent. I'm filing a demand for arbitration today. The arbitration demand went to the board, the HOA's management company, and their attorney, a man named Colin Treadway, who had a reputation for defending boards no matter how flimsy their position. Leona told me he was competent but overconfident, the kind of lawyer who assumed homeowners would fold under pressure. He's not expecting you to fight, she said. That's his first mistake. 3 weeks after the arbitration demand was filed, I left for work at 7:30 in the morning. When I came home at 5:45, my back gate was open. I walked into my yard and froze. The coop door was open. The chickens were gone, all 6 of them. The feeders were tipped over, the nesting boxes were empty, and there was a laminated notice zip tied to the coop door. Prohibited livestock removed per HOA Enforcement Authority under Section 9.3a, removal cost of $450 charged to your account. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty coop. Then I pulled out my phone and called Leona. They took my chickens. Her voice went very flat. Say that again. They came onto my property and took my chickens, all of them. There's a notice saying they removed prohibited livestock. Do not touch anything. I'm calling the police right now. Then I'm filing an emergency motion. The police arrived 40 minutes later. 2 officers, one older, one younger. The older one, Officer Brennan, walked the yard with me, photographed the open gate, the coop, the notice. He asked careful questions. Did you give anyone permission to enter your property? No. Was the gate locked? Yes. Do you have any security cameras? No, but my neighbor does. His camera faces this direction. Officer Brennan nodded. This isn't a civil matter anymore. This is trespassing and theft of property. I'm filing a report. You'll get a case number. Give that to your attorney. Leona filed the emergency motion that night. It requested an immediate restraining order against the HOA, the return of my property, and an emergency hearing. The motion included Officer Brennan's report, the photographs, the notice, and a signed affidavit from my neighbor, Dennis Kowalski, whose security camera had captured 2 people entering my yard at 1:15 in the afternoon, staying for 18 minutes, and leaving with my chickens in plastic carriers. The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, plain walls, fluorescent lights, a judge who looked tired before we even started. Margaret was there with Colin Treadway. Leona sat beside me, a thick folder on the table in front of her. The judge, Judge Arlene Matos, read through the motion, the police report, and the affidavit without expression. Then she looked at Colin Treadway. Counselor, did your clients enter Mr. Castellano's property and remove his animals? Colin stood. Your Honor, the HOA was acting within its enforcement authority under the covenants to remediate a violation that had gone unaddressed. That's not what I asked. Did they enter his property without permission and remove his animals? They removed prohibited livestock, yes. Judge Matos looked at him for a long moment. You're aware that's called theft, correct? Colin hesitated. The board believed it had authority under. The board does not have authority to enter private property and seize personal belongings, Mr. Treadway. That's not how covenants work. That's not how the law works. She turned to Margaret. Ms. Lindholm, where are the chickens now? Margaret's voice was tight. They were relocated to a farm sanctuary. So you gave away Mr. Castellano's property. They were in violation. They were his property. You stole them. Do you understand that? Margaret said nothing. Judge Matos issued the restraining order on the spot. She ordered the HOA to cease all enforcement actions, to return the chickens within 72 hours or pay fair market value plus damages, and scheduled a full hearing on the covenant interpretation for 3 weeks out. She also referred the matter to the county prosecutor's office for potential criminal charges. Leona leaned over and whispered, "We just won." But that wasn't the end. 2 weeks after the hearing, a county extension agent named Claudia Wren called me. She'd heard about my case from Martin Ruiz and wanted to ask if I'd be willing to speak at a community meeting about backyard composting and sustainable gardening. I said yes. The meeting was held at the community center on a Thursday night. About 40 people showed up, mostly residents from surrounding neighborhoods. I talked about composting, crop rotation, soil health, and how my chickens fit into a closed-loop system that reduced waste and fertilized my garden naturally. People asked questions. They took notes. 3 people asked for my contact information. One of them was a man named Eric Voss who lived 2 streets over and had been trying to start a neighborhood composting program for 2 years. You should talk to the county about expanding the program, he said. There's grant funding for residential sustainability projects. You'd be perfect. I applied for the grant the following week. It was a county-level initiative designed to promote urban agriculture and waste reduction. The application required references, a project plan, and proof of concept. I included photographs of my garden, my compost system, and my coop, along with letters from Martin Ruiz and Claudia Wren. The grant was awarded 6 weeks later, $3,500 to expand my composting system and host quarterly workshops on sustainable gardening for county residents. The county sent out a press release. It included my name, my address, and a photograph of me standing in my garden. That same week, a late-season cold snap hit our area. Temperatures dropped into the 20s at night, stayed below freezing during the day. It wasn't unusual for early spring, but it was bad timing. A lot of people in the neighborhood had started seedlings indoors, planning to transplant them into garden beds in the next few weeks. The frost killed everything that had already been planted outside. I got my first call on a Saturday morning. It was Eric Voss. "Tom, I know this is a lot to ask, but do you have any compost to spare? My tomato beds are completely shot and I need to rebuild the soil before I can replant. I've got about 60 gallons finished. You're welcome to half. I'll pay you for it. Don't worry about it, just come by this afternoon." He showed up at 2 with a truck and 4 empty bins. We loaded them up, and as he was leaving, he paused. "You know, Margaret Lindholm's garden got hit hard too. I saw her out there this morning pulling dead plants." I didn't say anything. 3 days later, Margaret called me. Her voice was different, smaller. "Tom, this is Margaret Lindholm. I'm calling because I heard you might have compost available and I wanted to ask if I could purchase some. My garden beds were damaged in the freeze and I'm trying to recover them before the season is completely lost." I let the silence sit for a moment. "You want to buy compost from me?" "Yes, I'd pay whatever you think is fair." "Margaret, the last time we spoke you were in court defending your decision to steal my chickens." Her voice cracked slightly. "I know, and I'm sorry. I was wrong. The board was wrong. I let this get out of hand and I'm sorry." I thought about hanging up. I thought about saying no. But I also thought about the garden she'd spent years building, the work that goes into soil, and the fact that being cruel in return wouldn't actually fix anything. "I'll give you compost, no charge, come by Saturday morning." She came by at 9. She brought her own bins, loaded them quietly, and before she left, she turned to me. "The board is dropping all fines, all actions, everything. I'm stepping down as president next month. I just wanted you to know." I nodded. She left. The full arbitration hearing happened 4 weeks later. Leona presented the case in meticulous detail. The covenant language, the county permits, the illegal entry, the theft, and the county grant award that explicitly recognized my work as a model for residential sustainability. Colin Treadway tried to argue that the board had acted in good faith based on its interpretation of the rules. The arbitrator, a retired judge named Harold Eng, stopped him mid-sentence. "Good faith doesn't include breaking into someone's yard and stealing their animals, counselor. The board's interpretation was wrong. Their enforcement was illegal. This case is over." He ruled in my favor on every count, all fines vacated, all legal fees reimbursed, a formal apology from the board to be read at the next general meeting, and a permanent injunction prohibiting the HOA from any future enforcement actions related to my chickens or garden. Margaret resigned 5 days later. The new board president, a retired teacher named Angela Ruiz, called me the following week and asked if I'd be willing to serve on a new community standards committee tasked with updating the covenants to reflect modern residential practices. I agreed. My chickens came back. The farm sanctuary had taken good care of them, and when I opened the coop door and they walked back into their run, it felt like something broken had been set right. If you made it to the end of this story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had an HOA try to enforce a rule that didn't actually exist? Have you ever been told you can't do something on your own property because someone else decided it didn't fit their vision? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you know someone who's dealing with an HOA that thinks the rules are whatever they say they are, share this video and subscribe if you haven't, hit the bell, and we'll see you in the next one. They came for my chickens. The freeze came anyway, and in the end, I was the one they came to for help.